welcome everybody. Today's webinar recording, we're going to be talking about the State of the DEX Industry Report, which we published a couple weeks ago. And before we get into that, we're going to do some introductions. So my name is Sean Malvey. I'm a Senior Editor and Content Marketing Manager here at NexThnk. And I will pass it to Jeffrey Wright first. Jeffrey, if you could just say your job title, where you work, some of your responsibilities.
I am Jeffrey Wright, Global Solution Owner of Digital Experience and now Gen AI. I work in New Jersey and do anything that comes into that creative stack and impacts the end user in any experience, any experience vertical or even anything else that we have. It's pretty broad, my role.
Excellent. And you're at Mondelez International, correct, Jeffrey?
I'm at Mondelez International,
Okay,
yes.
Excellent. And we also have Komal Verma here on the call. Komal, could you introduce yourself, state where you work and some of your responsibilities?
Yes. So hi everyone. My name is Komal Verma and I am part of HCL Technologies. I handle the portfolio of digital experience management and sustainability. I work with almost a lot of Fortune 500 and G2000 customers looking into their estate, at how their digital experience look like, and advise them to create a strategy to improve the digital experience.
Excellent. Excellent. So we have two experts on the webinar today, which is very helpful because we're going to be talking about the report that we recently published. So the State of the DEX Industry, this is a survey that we ran actually 4 years ago. We published it at the end of 2019, and we wanted to go back and ask similar questions. So unintentionally, we published this 4 years ago, right before the pandemic, and everybody had to shift to remote and hybrid work, and also at a time when sort of DEX and the acronym and the narrative around what end user computing professionals do wasn't quite as popular as it is today. So we wanted to do a similar thing, which was look at some of the questions we asked 4 years ago and ask them again today. And we focused on two principal groups, which were IT leaders and then the employees that they support. So it's also just a fun scenario where you're able to ask somebody a question, turn right around, and then ask another person the same question that they mutually depend upon. So we have some interesting data that we'll share with you on this webinar. Before I forget, you can find the report on our website, nexthnk.com/resource/State of the DEX Industry Report. We also have a couple other breakaway reports from the same survey that are going to be coming out in the coming weeks. Country analysis, so there was 4 countries, respondents came from 4 countries in the report, the US, the UK, France, and Germany, and we'll have a report just specifically talking about that. But we will talk about some of that data today on this webinar. And then we have a series of breakaway work sector reports. So if you're an IT professional and you happen to work in healthcare or in banking or whatever industry, you might find something appealing to you in these reports. And possibly by the time you listen to this recording, they'll already be up on the site on our resource page. So keep your eyes open for those. All right, so let's get into it. There's a couple, we can call them chapters, themes throughout the report, and I'm just touching upon the highlights. So one is looking at, again, about some of the questions we asked a couple years ago versus now, and just trying to gauge people's opinions on the industry, digital employee experience. Good news is that, and it's probably not much of a surprise, but the industry itself has grown since the pandemic. I know we became quite relevant in 2020 as a company. I mean, we had notoriety prior to that, but we did gain quite a bit of popularity just in the spring and summer of 2020. But this next stat is what's kind of appealing to me. It's a little scary, but so basically office workers and IT workers both feel that there's very much room that should be done. There's a lot that's left to be done in terms of improving their DEX. And before we get into these two, I'll leave the next stat, which I really like, and this is the aspect of the survey which I love, is when you can ask one group a question and turn around and ask another group a question. The same thing. So when we focus just on IT leaders, we ask them, so how many of you do you believe that your organization's workers are completely satisfied with their DEX? 54% of those IT leaders said, oh yeah, I think the employees we support are completely satisfied. When we ask the same question to the employees they support, only 24% said that. So I'm going to pause for a second and let's ask Jeffrey, what comes to mind when you see this discrepancy between the two parties? Does it surprise you? Why or why not?
I mean, obviously, 25% of the people are liars.
There you go. Excellent. We can jump to. No.
It's really that simple. It's just that simple. They're pathological liars. We've been working in an echo chamber for decades, right? I being one of those people, starting as probably most people in my space as a desktop support person or a service desk person or a help desk person or whatever the bottom of the barrel was, starting in IT after, late 90s, Y2K, nobody cared. It was IT is fixing stuff, and if the employee or the customer that you're working with is dragging through their day with blue screens or reboots or not being properly provisioned or their persona's incorrect, nobody cared. It was IT was working on its own ship, trying to just fire off everything that they could to make it look right. The perception. I mean, how many times did I hear that? Perception beats out reality, right? So as long as you're in that echo chamber and the people that are signing your check within IT feel that the perception is we're doing a great job and we can spin that story, then we're good. And I believe that around probably 2010, 2012, probably around that time, about 10 years ago, there was enough people, and I'm sure social media had a lot to do with it. People were doing stuff to make things better for the customer and the employee, and they were reaching out directly to the employees and just being smart, asking those questions and saying, I ask 1 out of every 10 people said that we're doing a good job. The other 9 people that we just walking around the office, we've all done that, right? And they're saying, no, we're horrible, or my laptop's horrible, or how come I can't, why does it take 3 weeks to get Microsoft fill in the blank, right? Or why does it take a month for me to be approved for Adobe fill in the blank? These are all things that the echo chamber broke, it exploded, and we had to start focusing on that. We had to start listening to the employees. We had to, because it wasn't a matter of can we spin it anymore. When you have social media platforms like Yammer, I think Yammer was around that time, if you guys remember Yammer. But any type of internal social platform, people would be like, no, this is not great. My laptop keeps blue screening and whatever. So we were forced to listen. And then platforms like NexThnk, and if there's a few others in the business, but platforms like NexThnk, right, started going, no, let's poll, let's get an employee sentiment, let's go right to the source. What is the employee saying? And the employee, again, as you can see here reflects, the employee is saying, no, it is not great. And that's blended with a little bit of aggravation. It's blended with anger. There's some other emotions involved. Some people, culture-wise, we talk about people in the U.S. or in different countries where if their machine isn't great, they think it is.
Yeah.
There's some cultures that are very forgiving in a sense, and they go, no, my PC's okay.
Let me pause you right there, because I have the perfect segue question to that, and I wanted to ask you,
I knew you
Jeffrey, because I know Mondelez International, obviously an international company, but it also has roots in America. You're based in America, so
it's globular.
Globular, exactly. Universal, maybe in the future too. But so if we're trying to get to the moon, man. Sticking with Jeffrey, for this next one, then we'll jump to you, Komal. But so looking across the respondents from all the different countries asking the same question, the split is sort of similar between that parity between IT in the U.S. I guess where you were going with that, Jeffrey, have you noticed either in Mondelez or in your career, is this gap tend to be the same across in different regions, or do you feel like it's completely different, like you're seeing in some of these stats here in the U.S. versus other places?
It's a little bit different, but this so I noticed you don't have South America.
No, yeah, so just 4 countries. We're hoping maybe next year we can keep expanding this and adding countries. But
So South America, interestingly enough, right? South and Central America, we tend to have people that their deck score, so the hardware, right? Their hardware dex is low. It's very low. But when I pick up the phone, because I like to, I mean, again, I consider myself the chief happiness officer. I call people, and if I can't fix their problem, I at least try to get them to smile, right? For at least, or laugh for a second. But often the deck score is low, and I'll call people in South America or Central America, and they go, Jeff, it's fine. Like, it's okay, it's fine. You know, so it takes a couple minutes to boot up. It takes a little bit for this to work. You know, sometimes I get an error, but if I click it again, it's fine. And there's, you know, some of that's blended into human nature. You know, I'll give you a great example. We have another country that's not on here where it was taking, there's a very popular ITSM platform that I'm sure if you could take a guess is the one. I don't want to call them out. But it was taking somewhere between almost 90 seconds plus or minus for the page to resolve. And it was happening for so long. And again, NexThnk helped us fix that. It was happening for so long. Everyone just assumed it took over a minute for things to load. Right? We're talking the entire population of a department, right? Like a very large department. It was almost like a institutionalized of, when you click on this link, you'll see it moving. You'll see the little clock come up. Sometimes it takes up to a minute plus or minus. And I think the average was 90 seconds. Sometimes it was under a minute. Sometimes it was a little bit longer. But people would click it and go get a cup of coffee or tea.
That's interesting. So I guess pivoting, Komal, taking this particular stat and even the previous one that I showed, you know, we know that the understanding of DEX has kind of grown over the past few years. But do you have any theories or evidence, I guess, as to why between different countries people might have higher, lower digital satisfaction right now? Like, I feel like IT leaders have had 3 or 4 years now to try to right the ship a little bit, but is there any explanation why some of these issues still plague them today?
Sure. As Geoffrey initially started, right, when he took us back in time, when he was talking about various aspects, like when people were not focusing on measuring digital experience, right? So once a luxury, exceptional digital experience is now a necessity. This is what we see across our multiple customers. And today we feel it is a greatest source of the competitive differentiation any organization can have. Because when you are investing into something like a digital employee experience, you are enabling your greatest asset, which is your people, right? And when we look at different industries, or I would say different verticals, like starting from, if I take custom examples like high tech vertical or telecommunication, or looking into the geographies which are little bit stringent when it comes to security aspect, like Germany and others, we seriously see a lot of differentiation coming in. And post pandemic, many organizations have started investing into DEX because they want to give a similar experience, or they want a similar kind of a visibility for their workers which are working from office, as well as people who are working from home. And as different organizations belonging to different verticals have their different kinds of plan toward this hybrid workplace, I believe that differentiation is coming from that angle. There are people who are working from home in certain industries which are empowered a lot. For example, if I take example of high tech industries, those people are technically savvy. Also, the kind of accesses or the kind of exceptions that they have on their devices, they feel that they are pretty much comfortable the sort of devices, accesses that are given to them. Joffrey gave an example related to, like, it take a long time for getting a particular Microsoft thing or maybe Adobe thing. So we feel in certain industries, giving them more of a self-help, give them a view or give them a confidence that the digital experience is pretty good. But in some of the industries, I take example like where we have a lot of blue collar workers, or people who are not using the regular laptop desktop, but people who are working on, let's suppose, on the supply chain and other things like manufacturing industries and other. In that kind of a scenario, because the accessibility or the adoption of the technology is little bit low, and they're more towards that they are more dependent on the IT to resolve those issues. So we see that whenever there's an issue coming in, either they are suffering, they're either rebooting their machines, or maybe they're just clicking on the OK button again and again. They try to reinstall the things, and they have a poor experience. So these things kind of a thing coming from various aspects, like what is their hybrid strategy, whether they are continuing with the people working from home, and where if people are working from home, they're giving them the right kind of accesses. Secondly, the kind of technical savviness that we see in a particular organization, that how well they can adopt to the changes that are happening in the industry.
Excellent. I love how you kind of pointed out, and it's true, the specificity where you have certain industries and whether you have different, maybe like you were saying, blue collar workers who maybe are not going to spend as much time trying to solve certain IT issues versus other places. It definitely makes a difference. So let's go to the next chapter we have in the report, talking about incident management. We have a couple interesting stats. I know I said that we're 4 years removed from the pandemic. We're a couple days removed from Halloween, and this is one of the more spookier stats, but I think it's very telling because it talks a lot about what's going on and what's not going on. So what I mean by that is, I'll just read the stat first. We asked the office workers, who are, by the way, people in the office as well as remote and hybrid employees, what's the proportion of IT issues that you experience that you report to IT? And the response to that was 44%. So we asked the same question 4 years ago, and it was 55%. So this stat has actually gotten worse. People are reporting less of the problems that they face, and therefore tolerating more of the issues that they encounter daily. I guess let's stick with Komal first. What's your initial reaction to this figure, whether it's the 44% of issues being reported, or inversely, another way to think of it is the 56% of the time people are dealing with the problems, or just in IT may not be seeing it. What's your reaction to this stat?
I see it as a two side of a coin, and I would like to give both the perspective. One perspective is maybe that people are not reporting it and they are started living with those kind of a problems. Like maybe they are just restarting the machine at a case of blue screen of death, or maybe when the installation is not happening for a particular machine, they are just again doing the same thing, like maybe running the same thing as again and again, and which is not only impacting their time but also impacting their productivity. So it becomes a burning problem for the IT as well as the overall business. If your people is spending more time specifically on resolving the thing that should be given by default to them, they're not focusing on the thing that they should be doing as a part of business. Other aspect sometimes I feel is because in the time of pandemic, we work with multiple customers. Previously, pre-pandemic, we need to explain our customer what digital experience is, what kind of a tools or technologies or processes you can deploy or implement in your environment, which can give you more proactive benefit. But at the time of pandemic, I have seen a huge, I would say, increase in the knowledge of the people who are coming to us. They are very much well aware that what digital experience technologies are available. Things like whether it can do analytics, whether it can do automation, whether it can run some kind of a communication channel, what integrations are available, in multiple other aspects. I believe in the time of pandemic, people adopted these technologies, and maybe certain kind of issues which are repetitive in nature. I take a very simple example. You check any of our customers ticket data, you will find password reset is one of the major problem, or slowness in the device is a particular problem, or boot up time of a machine is a particular problem. These kind of scenarios are very easily fixed by these kind of a deck solution. So other way, I am thinking in a way that maybe customers have adopted the technology, they are a little bit moving toward the maturity model of digital experience, and that is why the employees are having a less scenarios or less issues coming to their desk, or maybe people are not calling much for these kind of a problems. So this is I see in a two different angle. Maybe the angle can I would say differ vertical to vertical. Some vertical are adopted to it, some vertical are just going into it, and those people are just suffering more because of this inherent issues that we see.
Excellent. And you've triggered a memory, selfish plug for a report I wrote years ago on the slow boot up time. You mentioned that as one of the issues. We analyzed anonymously our own data and looked at it, and were able to kind of pinpoint just a couple of the reasons why that is. certain apps, launching upon startup, Windows versions, things like that, and it makes a huge difference. But so let's just take a second here and do the comparison between the different countries as well, and kind of stay on this topic because I think there's a couple interesting things we can talk about here. So looking again at the same thing, what's the proportion of incidents that are being reported across the 4 countries? The U.S. it does have the highest percentage that's being reported. It's still not a great stat. Well over half are still just kind of tolerating the thing. And I don't know if there's anything to take from that, if it's just, as an American speaking on behalf of us, we like to complain more maybe. But Jeffrey, I want to ask you, what's, I guess, maybe this is a leading question, but what's the danger of, if you're an IT leader, sort of hanging your hat on just issues being reported? Is that the correct way to look at whether you and your team are doing a good job? And could you offer any fixes, potential fixes, so that you can change that mindset?
So first, so an interesting thing that I see is the demographic side, and call it, guerrilla, style, data retrieval, going into the weeds, into the woods. I believe people under the age of 30, right? A lot of the, Zoomers, Gen, whatever the younger Gen is, they all, or most of the ones I reach out to around the world, and that's why, again, we're super global, expect you to know that it broke, right? We have DNA teams that have some interesting things that crash or explode or catch on fire. And I've even said, hey man, don't you, call the desk, put in a ticket, do this, do that. They're like, you should know it broke. Like, this is 2023. We just went through a huge event. Like, I was home, I was here, I was there. If something blows up on my computer, okay, this isn't 2005, you as an IT institution should know it blew up. So why do I need to waste my time to report an incident that you, the IT people, should know happened, and fix it on the back end? I have an iPhone. The iPhone doesn't work right now when I do FaceTime on my Apple TV with my AirPods. It crashes. As soon as I even look it up, the Apple devs are already aware of the bug, and they're working on the fix with a notification saying, if you're having this issue, we have people working on it, and it will be fixed soon. Thank you for your, thank you for your Google thing. That's it.
All right.
And the older gen, I'd say probably around the blend of like the late 30s into the 40s, definitely do a better job of reporting these things, because we understand that we're not in a spaceship. We don't work at NASA, right? We're not Apple, right? We're way more complex. We have more SKUs. We have all these different things. The complexity is there. We try, at least I think most of us try at least a few times before they stop. So most people that I know in my space, when I say my space, my demographic probably, they'll report issues, especially when they first start at the company, they'll report issues. They'll try to report issues. They will do that for at least a few months, years. But if it never gets fixed, right, or if it's not really good, they stop. The older generations will complain and put in 1,000 tickets. And assume that it doesn't, like the squeaky wheel analogy. They will squeak away.
That's great. It's interesting you point out demographics, and even another thing you just said, how long somebody's at a company, because I certainly have done that. I'm guilty of that in the past. When you start at a new place, you want to reach out immediately, and then you kind of just get used to a situation wherever it is. Komal, I guess we can move to the next one in a second, but I'm slightly changing the question I was going to ask before. But I guess looking at the 3 European countries or any other regions maybe that you have customers where you support, do you see any trends, I guess, with the way IT leaders approach ticket volume or MTTR was always like the main sort of stat objective a couple years ago. Do you feel like that's still very much popular and top of mind for these people, or what's your sense?
It is still there. It is one of the important criteria we are still measuring, be it like the MTTR is there, or the number of ticket landing up at the desk, or be it the first call resolution, right? But people nowadays are asking more towards the experience, that how much time for my user is getting wasted using or fixing those kind of issues. How you are able to reduce that. So there are typical term like SLA that we used to give to our customer, that is very much still there, but customers are moving towards XLAs. They're talking about the time, like if you're talking about employee productivity, can you quantify that how many hours were wasted in the last week? How did you improve it with all those proactive things that you are seeing in the market? And when we look at these kind of a questions coming in from the customer, the typical scenarios, the typical solutions that we used to built in as a part of it is not able to resolve those answers. The world has moved from reactive to a proactive kind of a nature now, right? And all these experience level agreement will always, or I would say will only be realistic when there is a particular team, when there is a particular process, when there is a particular tool doing all these things proactively. So no matter whether these are our EMEA customers or whether these are our US customers, this is a transition we have seen from last 5 years, where people are asking beyond the regular SLAs that we see in the industry. Now we are also signing up kind of a contract which are very much attached to these kind of a thing, that whether if we are able to provide them a good experience, whether we are getting some kind of a bonus out of it. If we are not able to get those things done, we are getting a penalized as
Hmm.
well. And it's a more of a collaborative effort that we are seeing from our customers. Like for most of our customer, whenever we do something, or whenever we create a proactive team doing this, which we call as digital experience office, there's a stakeholder from our customer side as well who sits on the board with this team, who analyzes like every 15 days, okay, how many proactive tickets were created, how many of them are resolved, what are the automation that we have run, how many of these automation actually help my user. We also did analysis out of these users, that how many of these users opened the ticket and how many didn't open the ticket for these kind of scenarios. So this is what kind of a trend we are seeing in the customers, that they are also asking that how as HCL we can make their environment more proactive with the help of various tools and technologies and the industry knowledge that we bring to the table.
Great. And that's another fantastic segue to the next section, which I know you're talking about being proactive, but sometimes, issues slip through the cracks no matter how proactive you can be and how much you can automate things. It's just kind of the way it is. So focusing on that, we asked respondents to just reveal when they do have an issue and it's reported, how many times does that typically happen? And the respondents, the office workers, came back and told us that they tend to average one issue per week. And when that occurs, it takes up to 27 minutes across the 4 countries for IT to resolve the problem. And the other stat that really stood out to me in this is that the top statistic here, IT came back and said that they spend roughly half their time each week just fixing recurring problems. So issues that continually happen over and over again. I want to stop right there for a second and let's ask Komal again. So what kind of comes to mind when you think about IT fixing recurring problems? Do you think that there's things, low-hanging fruit, that can be automated and maybe IT leaders are just missing it? Why is it so difficult?
Yes, so I would say even today when people are just looking at the tickets landing up at the desk, right? Low hanging fruit, we just discuss about, like I take a very typical problem, like maybe application is crashing. We all use Teams or other collaboration platform like Zoom and others, where most of our people are dependent on to. Crashing of those applications, which can be easily fixed if we identify what the fault is, which versions are more stable as a part of it. So we to look into it, we certainly need to have a technology which give you the right visibility. The main problem why people are not able to identify it, because they don't have any tool or technology to look into it, that where exactly the problem is coming. They only look into the ITSM platform only showcase the issues that have happened, and users are now complaining about it. But if we have a kind of a solution where they're able to see proactively, okay, I see like out of my 100K users, maybe 100 users are facing this issue. Maybe they have not reached out to the desk. There is no ITSM ticket I see, but these people are facing a kind of a problem. And then when they do a correlation out of it, that out of this 100 user, 50 user facing because the binary that they're using is unstable. And if they fix it, that is how we are going to improve those things which are not visible to them. So the right visibility is the most important aspect. After that, once you have the right visibility, you know that which team is going to fix it. When you look at a end user problem, the problem can happen at any point of time. The problem could be a device problem could be a OS problem, whatever the OS you are using. The problem could be an application problem that you're using, or maybe that application is running somewhere in the cloud in the backend. If you have the right visibility, you can identify which team is going to resolve this particular problem. So that is how, if you have this kind of a process, if you have this kind of a tool that give you visibility, capability to correlate, bring the power of AI ops, and then run the automation also, that is how, if you can look more towards it rather than just looking at an ITSM platform and reacting to the ticket that has already landing up at the desk.
Brilliant. And I guess another important question we asked too, so what happens after the fact with users? So if they're not, we went to the office workers and said, okay, so if you're not identifying the issue and reporting it to the help desk, what do you typically do? Now, I wish one of the options we gave was maybe throw your laptop out the window of frustration. We didn't added that in, but we do have the three best things, or the top three things that somebody will do if they don't report a problem to IT. So the first thing they typically do is they reboot their device, or they'll look for a workaround on their own. Perhaps, Jeffrey, that's when they have the demographic breakdown. Maybe younger generations tend to focus more on trying to find the answer on their own. I'm not sure. And then the third thing they do is they ask a colleague for advice. So sort of knowing this from our survey, I'm curious, Jeffrey, does this sort of conform to what you've seen either at Mondelez or just in your experience, the way end users tend to behave after a problem? Do you have any comments on this sort of sequence of steps?
Yeah. Reboot my device. I feel like reboot really is usually the last thing people want to do. But again, I could be crazy. I could be wrong. Usually it's the I think the majority is they try to fix it themselves. They Google it. They're on Reddit. They're on wherever you can find data that could help. Excel crashing. Here's the error. Most people I know, again, probably a younger demographic, but they try everything before they have to call the desk. As a matter of fact, we were trying to do an Engage campaign around, like what are it's a very, doing an Engage campaign to say like, hey, why do we stink, right? It's a weird thing because there's a lot of people that are like, no, we're not sending that out, right? We're not going to send out a why does IT stink campaign. We need to hire lawyers to rewrite this thing. And it usually doesn't come out the right way. But more often than not, people at my company will do everything, and the only time they'll absolutely positively reach out to the desk or submit a ticket or usually chat is when there is a hard stop, a titanium wall that they hit of, I need to be added to an AD group, I need to have access to X. My PC blue screens every time I click this link or this application, period. Full stop. That is when most, and I say most, but I have to tell you, it's a huge, very, very large percentage of the people, 99.999999, will tell me that exact thing. Nobody calls the desk to say, hey, I'm in Excel and sometimes it freezes for a couple seconds, or sometimes I'm in Outlook and then this happens, or sometimes I'm in SAP and then this happens. Nobody does that. That's when they'll check to see if there's any updates. Maybe they'll reboot. But, I hate that term silent sufferers because they're not as silent as they used to be. But silent sufferers, people just drag themselves through the day. And sometimes like landmines, they just know, okay, I'm not going to click that yet. Or if I click that, I know it's going to take 30 seconds for this spreadsheet to open because it's either an older version, the wrong version, whatever it is, they save the brutal stuff for last.
All right, next section. So we have new technologies, which was an interesting one for us. So we asked basically IT leaders about some of the new purchases that they've had since the pandemic and how well they've been going. The short answer, not that great. So we found out that IT decision makers, they've admitted that they're going to either replace or remove 37% of the new technologies that they purchased in just the last 2 years. So that can be anything from hardware, software, browser plugins, upgrades, network tools, whatever it might be. So I have a couple stats around this and a lot of questions. Let's first take a pause for Komal. I guess simply if you can kind of explain the reason it's so difficult for IT leaders, departments to implement a new tool and any solutions. I mean, you can go in 100 different directions with this one, but just explaining why it's so difficult for people to implement a new tool and any solutions to maybe bridge that gap.
Sure. So, at the time of pandemic, it was like a hoarding of all tools and technologies that we have seen, right? We have just purchased a lot of, like, most of our customer purchase a lot of things when it comes to, like, maybe remote technologies that are there, or maybe some kind of a tools that can make the users productive and so on and so forth. But later on time, and as we are also seeing in almost all the markets, people are moving towards kind of a hybrid workplace. They are not only limiting themselves to remote from a home or remote from anywhere. People are being coming back to offices because of that emotional structure that they used to have, those coffee break conversations that they're having. So some of the technology that they have purchased maybe is not that much useful as of now. And at that point of time, these customers just bought it in one go. They didn't realize that which user needs what. So there is a very important concept of personas that we see, and there is an insight around persona that in any customer that we go, you will not find that even if two-person who are working in sales or two-person who are working in marketing, they use same kind of tools and technologies. Maybe if there's a marketing person who works on content, he or she just uses, let's suppose, maybe Word or other thing to write that content that is there. But the same person, if he works on creating the videos, he will be using those heavy software as a part of it. So maybe at that point of time, the right personalization is not being done as a part of it, because we were just looking at how we can enable our users who are working from home or working from anywhere, and now they are just standardizing the things that are coming in the environment more aligned to those personas, right? If we have different personas, and that is how, like, I would say that is a major concern that we have seen, that once you do the right persona identification, you would know which of your users need what kind of a devices should be given to them. Every user might not require a resourceful device, right? There are certain people who are just working on couple of application, maybe a small, like a thin client which can run a VDI, or maybe a low intensive device can be given to them. Similarly, when it comes to applications or softwares, a lot of our customers spend a lot on these different applications that they see in their environment, which is not being used later on. So rationalization on that aspect of it is currently being done, because every customer or every organization have financial constraint at a time of pandemic, and even now if you look in the market, people are restricting when it comes to the budgets as well. So I see, like, if it would have been a right way of analyzing that what is actually needed, maybe those tools and technologies that was being hoarded at that point of time will not be purchased, and now just organizations are meeting their target on the cost optimization in a more rational way, that identifying that who needs what, and then giving those users according to their needs, as per their job profile that they are into.
Excellent. And so I wanted to slightly pivot to hardware. So we asked the same question about IT leaders and their hardware plans for the future. They came back, and this is actually looking at it across the 4 countries. What percentage of devices does your organization plan to replace over the next 3 years? US tops the list, over 50%, 53% of which they plan to replace. Sustainability and IT, especially for NexThnk, and for a lot of the work that I do at NexThnk, is kind of near and dear to my heart. We write a lot of reports about it. We talk a lot about it with the product, how to extend the hardware refresh cycle. Jeffrey, I don't know if you have any strong opinions on this, or advice, strategies, things that have worked for you at Mondelez to help IT leaders save some of that money?
You know, I do get involved in some of the hardware decisions. I will say that the IBM had a use case, and I think even Apple did the case study around it. If you're familiar with it, the Apple had the total cost of ownership calculator that they actually just released about how when IBM had said, hey, we offered 100,000 people a choice between Windows and Mac, and we were going to support the Mac and VMs. And the nice thing around Macs is, in general, as long as you're now on the M chip, you can technically have a 6-7 year refresh cycle, right? And IBM's now going into was 2017, so they're going into that 6 year mark, and because they were built to order, they did get a little bit better of a Mac, but as anybody that uses a Mac, how many people do you have, friends or family or anybody in that space, that say, I have a MacBook Pro from like 2015 and it's still killing it, right? Or how many people have even like a MacBook or a MacBook Air that was spec'd out reasonably? It still does a great job at what it needs to do. It runs Office incredibly well. It does the main thing. SaaS solutions are fantastic. So we are beginning to explore that side of things. On the other side, it's the Chromebooks. It's, we're a big Google shop, and we have so many people that are, again, it's an age thing, right? The demographic. How many people I know, at least in my office and a few other of the larger innovation offices, with people in their 20s that state, where's my Chromebook? Like, I see you have a Windows option, I see you have Macs, but where's my Chromebook? And I find that hilarious, considering Chromebooks used to always be kind of like oh, Chromebook. But anybody that's falling asleep at the wheel or in the back seat, right? They don't understand. Our kids, right? Every person around the world that has a kid in school has a Chromebook. At my son's high school, Chromebooks, right? Colleges now, Chromebooks. Why is everyone shocked that these kids, I say these kids, people in their 20s, they go into the workforce and they're like, I've been using G Suite, I've been using Google Docs and Google Sheets, and like, I've been using this stuff for so long. And wait, we have to reboot? Wait, my laptop needs updates? I need how many times do I have to reboot it? What do you mean security? What? Like what? Like, my Chromebook worked. I had a Chrome tab. I had 1,000 Chrome tabs open, and I did my work. Now I need to like reboot my machine 75 times, and I get pop-ups telling me, I have a critical vulnerability and an update and this and that, and I get it. As somebody in that space, I get it. Like, why would these people are so quick to pick these things up, and then you go into the workforce and they're like, here's your, no offense to HP, Lenovo, or Dell, but here's your Windows laptop. Here's your 45-pound brick.
Right.
And by the way, put it in your bag. And oh, you can't use Chrome. You got to use Edge, but it is Chrome. Don't worry about it. Oh, you can't use. They don't care. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, it shocked me when I heard people starting to say, oh, you guys don't offer up a Chromebook? Right? I only use Office. More so, I see so many people use just the web-based Outlook, the web-based Office apps, right? I personally, I like having the fat client, but I don't necessarily think it's, it's just kind of like habit. But when I go to like, the Teams web client or Outlook.com, you're always on the latest thing because it's web-based, right? Microsoft has all their web stuff. It's up to date. It's ready to rock and roll. You're not on a 45-year-old version of Excel. Although Excel on the web's a little bit clunky, a little weird, but I get it, So I truly believe it's going to be that kind of blend. I think the old school and the old guard likes their Windows machines. I think people in the middle kind of like are, they like Macs. They're cool. I like my Mac, but there's a million reasons why. I'm more in that creative space. But I totally get the cost savings from getting a Chromebook, right? The cost savings with doing G Suite, it's like $1 compared to Windows licensing and Office, like all of these things that are heavy duty. And then from the hardware spec, the Mac, total cost of ownership for the Mac, yeah, if you really want a solid hardware platform that you can kind of like stretch the refresh to 6, 7 years, it's probably going to be an Apple product, because most Windows laptops that I know of in that price point look like, dude, they look like something out of a steampunk movie, right? By 4 years, right? They got like, keys are popping off. Just, they look like you think they look, right? So
I think you did a great job, of highlighting the complexity and the differences to
I
kind of
just want to
to
add.
pick the right thing. Going in that vein, then, so ultimately, you're trying to make the decision not to sacrifice whatever you purchase, to sacrifice like the experience that somebody has to deal with it. Do you, Kamal or Jeffrey, would you like to share maybe any particular use case where you're able to not only protect but possibly optimize somebody's experience with a new technology, or any particular use case between HCL and Mondelez?
So HCL does do a really good. So one of the cool things, you can rebrand, you can make a Windows laptop a Chromebook, right? So let's say you have a laptop that's 3, 4, 5 years old. It's got some crusties on it. You got to like sanitize it, throw it through the dishwasher, whatever whatever we do to kind of refurb these things. You can strip them, put a Chrome OS on them, right? And HCL is actually working on a little bit of a pilot to have, instead of like throwing these things in the garbage or recycling them, you can squeeze a few years out of life out of a Windows laptop running Chrome OS. Because if you got a laptop that's a few years old with an i5 and 8 gigs of RAM, it's a beast for a Chromebook, right? A not so great Windows laptop makes a phenomenal Chromebook. So HCL has been working with us. That's one of the pilots. We're also working with HCL around we use a product called, I don't know if you're familiar with Jamf. I mean, most people with the Apple space kind of are familiar with it, but they're helping us kind of feel that out. So HCL is extremely well equipped to understand our complexity, and gives us, all these different recipes. And again, it may not be, most of the time, it is not a recipe for every country. A lot of times, right, it's the recipe that works for, America likes cheeseburgers. South America likes their dish, right? Like, Europe likes this, the Chinese like this, the Aussies and the Kiwis like this, South Africa. So the recipes, HCL they're the chefs in the kitchen that help us with this. They're the ones that kind of put those recipes. And look, sometimes they hand us a recipe and it's kind of like, whoa, And then other times you're like, oh my God, masterpiece. Let's blueprint it. Boom. And then they can pitch it over to the team that implements, or that helps at least understand if this is a good fit. But again, companies of our size, you need chefs in the kitchen. Not too many, but you need chefs in the kitchen that are willing to experiment with these recipes to help us build the right experience by the countries. Because there is no one recipe unless, right? Like the old school model of, hey everybody, does everyone like white rice? Yeah, okay, white rice. Okay, white rice. Everyone gets white rice. There you go. And it's exactly what you think it is. It's the plainest of plain. Like, here's a piece of paper. You like eating paper? Eat paper. And you're like, ugh, okay. Yeah, so for us, HCL does a great job on, again, being those chefs to help us come up with those recipes.
Excellent. All right, we've gone almost to the full hour. I do have just one last question. Thank you guys so much for sticking on the call and not bailing on me.
Not a problem.
So let's go.
Yeah, I was going to bail on you a couple times, but that's all.
It's
During the
going
call.
interesting.
Great. All right, final question. So looking at future investments, at the top here are the categories, the areas where respondents are looking to invest in 2024. Not a surprise that Dex Technologies topped the list, or that category at least, as well as automation workflow. And digital transformation efforts kind of makes even more sense now, seeing this, knowing what's gone on with the past 2 years of technology rollouts and how many people are unhappy with those implementations. And then at the bottom of the list, we sort of have some other categories just called my attention to is network, security, service desk, application management tools. Maybe that means that they're actually happy with what they have now and they don't see the need to invest in more or new tools. I'm not quite sure. But we can maybe just go around first with Kamal, and then Jeffrey, if you feel like commenting on the data here before you where people plan to invest, or where you think maybe there's a topic that's missing from the list that you think is really important, have at it.
So the top two one that at least we see in the digital employee experience and automation workflow, it's not a surprise to me. This is what we are seeing in the industry in every other customer meeting that we are going into. And I feel that it's the right time to invest into these technologies as well. If you look at the benefit, like if we just speak about digital experience, employee experience benefit out of it, you get that instant visibility so that you are able to reduce that mean time to resolve that particular problem. We all talk about hardware refresh. Geoffrey gave very good examples when it comes about Mac devices and others, but we are taking our customer to something which we call as performance based refresh, right? Using a dex parameter which becomes like a quantifiable score. Like if your machine is, like generally we see customers following 3 years life cycle, 4 year life cycle, or a 5 year life cycle and struggling with it because they are tired or maybe they are married to that kind of a life cycle. So rather than taking that, if you look at a dex score, like if your machine is 3 year old, your dex score is still good, let's suppose 8, or maybe a little replacement of a RAM is required, or a little replacement of a disk is required, doing that will do a wonders for you. This can help you reap a lot of benefit when it comes to cost. Rather than buying $1,000 new device, maybe replacement of a RAM will cost you $100 or maybe $200 as a part of it. Important aspect comes around software reclamation that you can take as a part of digital experience. Automation workflow, I feel every other organization is creating some kind of a flow as a part of it. Like we talk about ITSM, we talk about large giants that are there. Everyone is creating some kind of a co-pilot, some kind of flows that are there. The question or the thought that I want to leave our audience is with that there are so many co-pilots available, there are so many orchestration tools available, but which is the main pilot for all these co-pilots? Like which will be the main reason, or which is the main orchestrator that our organization should use so that they have a right end-to-end flow? So these are the things that I see that the investment are going to, and I believe currently digital employee experience I feel is little more matured. When it comes to automation, workflow, and other thing, people are talking about it, but investment and the maturity model of that will still take little bit more time so that people start realizing benefits of that orchestration.
Great. And Jeffrey, any comments just on technology investments for next year, advice, comments on the data that we pulled?
Not really. I mean, AI factories are a big thing. The Harvard Business School just ran a big thing I'm part of. It's just the amount of data and transactions and the large language models and getting a better prompting environment. From a digital experience standpoint, I mean, I know you guys are working on it, but at some point in time, if not already, once there's a prompting ability or an LLM that's built into the NexThnk Infinity platform, which I don't know if you can share anything, Sean, if you guys are working on it or not. I'm assuming you probably are, but it would be great to have the prompting ability and the trillions of friggin' data points at most companies like ours to be able to ingest that and then be able to ask the Infinity platform, give me a plan of action that will increase my overall experience by fill in the blank percentage here. Like you're talking about my dream, my absolute like ecstasy dream from like 20 years ago. Like, help me fix stuff, please,
Yes.
AI. And then use that. We are heavily investing in those types of spaces with the Gen AI space. Even the graphical, I'm working with marketing teams on Gen AI. That's not with HCL, that's internal. We're using like the AEM stack to have our digital assets. All of these things are, look, we're trying to get people to do things better. And I think a lot of people are a little worried about AI in general. But I often feel it's going to be humans plus AI that really makes the difference. It's still going to be people, process, tool. AI is still a tool. You still have to have humanity come in front of it, or else you get the Terminator scenario, right? And we don't want that.
Got it. I think that's a good point to end it there. avoid the Terminator
What, the
scenario.
Terminator?
And, but this
Jeff, it all comes back to the Terminator
Yeah.
or the Matrix. It's one or the other. Plug me in.
excellent. Yeah, I think this is great. We can we'll end it there. Thank you both for being on the webinar today.